So today I'm going to review a really sad case which I watched on YouTube. It was about a 12-year-old girl who stabbed her brother to death in what the mother believes was a drug-induced psychosis. As I review this video, I'm going to be looking for hints as to whether this was drug-induced or not drug-induced.
Come here.
A 12-year-old girl from Oklahoma on body camera after she stabs her younger brother to death. What her mother is now saying about the unimaginable and heartbreaking situation. The 12-year-old girl, whose name has not been released publicly, admitted to stabbing her 9-year-old brother Xander in his bed. As you saw, the girl can be seen on body camera video running out of the house, admitting to stabbing her brother and apologizing. Her mother, April Lyda, enters the video here.
I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry. I don't know what to I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm sorry.
Xander died at the hospital from several stab wounds to the chest. Lyda is standing by her daughter, saying she was a well-behaved child with no prior history of behavioral problems, and that she was put on a medication that she was off of for more than a year. But Lyda says it was not a psychiatric medication. She said she couldn't go into detail about it. She also disputed that her daughter is a so-called cutter.
Was she able to tell you what led to her stabbing him?
She has no idea why she did it. She's heartbroken and feels very guilty, but she still doesn't understand why she did it. She said it was like it wasn't her. And the team of specialists working with her, they believe her after working with her for the last 6 months every day. And I believe her too, because I know my child and I know that wasn't her.
Joining me to discuss this incredibly sad case is Dr. Angela Arnold. She is a psychiatrist based in Atlanta. Dr. Arnold, welcome to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, it's very concerning. First of all, she's only 12 years old. It's difficult to treat young girls that are that age. You have to be very careful about the different kinds of medicines you give them, and they can cause different side effects. We've heard that this little girl she was diagnosed with ADHD, so some sort of attention deficit disorder. So you're to assume that she was put on an amphetamine for that. Okay, that's how we treat attention deficit disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm also assuming that she was having some sort of side effects with that medication in her past treatment because they took her off of it for a year. And then they say they put her back on it and she had some more side effects from it. But she was not on the medication when this incident occurred in which she killed her brother.
So what does that lead you to believe? Because stimulants are commonly used to treat ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There are some non-stimulant medications. They're not revealing the actual medication that she was on and then off of. So what does this lead you to believe then?
Well, she wasn't on the medication at the time that this occurred. It's what they're describing could be a brief psychotic episode. She could have had a brief psychotic episode in which she went outside of herself and went in and she didn't know what she was doing and she killed her brother. Mm-hmm. But you can't link that to a medication that she was not on. It cannot be linked to a medication that she was not on.
April Lyda basically explains what she believed happened. Let's listen.
Help me understand. So she was on an ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, very common for parents out there. They'll hear about it. They come with indications, but there's usually guidance about, well, you may start seeing things. Was this part of a downturn or a spiral? Was there any other behavior that gave you any indication that the kid was unstable?
No. She was fine. She wasn't unstable until she was put back on the medication.
So she was on the medication.
She hurt herself.
What happened to take her off it?
She cut her arms within a month of being back on it. So I immediately took her off after speaking to the school and her doctor and herself. We had a long conversation. She said that she felt like she was really irritated, irritable, angry for no reason on the medication. So, of course, I took her off of it. Unfortunately, it was too late. The damage was done. Stuff like this can happen months or even years after being off of a medication like this.
Dr. Arnold, what do you make of what April Lyda said?
I do not believe that the mother can assume that months off of a medication, it can trigger behavior in someone like this. Okay? The medicine is out of her system. The medicine does not last for a long time in her system. And the mother is assuming that that a medication went in and did harm to this little girl's brain. However, the mother was also saying that the little girl's behavior up to this point was fine. She was not exhibiting any bad behavior, and she's not exhibiting any bad behavior in prison. So why would you cannot say that this behavior comes and goes off of the medication. You would have more signs and symptoms of that. So I do not believe that the medication that she was off of caused damage to her brain. In other words, made her psychotic, which then made her kill her brother.
So what could be going on here? It's stunning to me that a 911 call is placed. She's apologizing profusely for what she did.
She knew what she did, didn't she?
It certainly appears so. So what do you make of that?
I have to wonder why the mother is talking so profusely about her good behavior. I wonder what that's covering up. So does that mean that she's had bad behavior in the past? And does this little girl have a different diagnosis? Is she bipolar? Sometimes bipolar disorder is confused with ADHD, particularly in very young children. Nobody wants to have their child diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but she could have a completely different diagnosis than ADHD. And that could also be why the medication was affecting her so poorly.
I have read that in the past, that bipolar disorder and ADHD can sometimes be confused for one another or misdiagnosed. But does bipolar disorder it does cause manic episodes, but does it cause one to stab someone repeatedly lying in their bed and then run out of the house apologizing about it?
I have to wonder if the little girl was taking some sort of drugs that was in the house, or was she mad at her brother and wanted to kill him? That has to be in the differential diagnosis. Had something happened between her and her brother, and she wanted to kill her brother.
So an impulsive act.
Yes, an impulsive. We all know that most murders happen between loved ones. And I also know that there are a lot of viewers out there that feel that medications are always the evil in this. But that is not the case. When someone comes to the doctor and they need a psychiatric medication or any kind of medication, typically the medication helps the person, okay? And we are not in the business of giving out medications to help big pharma succeed, okay?
I have a lot to say, actually, about this one. I guess the first thing is, my heart absolutely breaks for the family. This has got to be one of the saddest stories I've ever heard. You can hear it in the girl's voice as she's leaving the house. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And the distress in her mother and the agitation. And the thing that kind of strikes me is that it's that same thing, when people don't understand what medications can do, they start reaching for things. Oh, the mother's hiding something. The mother's trying to, hide the fact that it was a very, they're inferring a very chaotic and maybe even traumatic home environment. And so she's saying she was really sweet, or maybe she had a bipolar disorder. The truth is all of these things are potentially true, and we have incomplete information. But I was always taught that, the parents really know their kids best. So I would start from a blank slate of like, okay, so all right, you're saying that this drug really changed your daughter. Tell me about it. What did you notice after she started it? She started the drug. She became erratic, really impulsive, having difficulty sleeping, all of these things. And then she started to cut herself. We stopped the drug. she'd been off the drug for 3 weeks or something like that, and it was still going on, and she had just fundamentally changed. If that had happened, I mean, to me, I would think about that as being drug related. So I wouldn't immediately write it off. So, and then there's this idea about like, well, there's two things. There's this idea about, you know, can psychiatric medication even make someone become homicidal? And so many people don't know this, but I think it was back in the 2000s, the FDA introduced class-wide labeling for stimulant medications, saying that they increased the risk of, aggressive behavior. This is on all of the stimulants already, because they recognize it as a risk. I mean, this young girl could have been on any ADHD medication like Ritalin, Adderall, but it really sounds like maybe it was Strattera. I know there's some really bad things that happen with Strattera, that's atomoxetine. And what I do know from, reading a lot about people who have become aggressive, suicidal, or homicidal on antidepressant medications is after they have that adverse reaction, it can endure for a period of time. Now, typically, adverse behavioral reactions to these medications, they're gone within 2 weeks of stopping the drug, sometimes as soon as 2 days, but sometimes they linger. And I've even heard cases of it going on for a couple months afterwards, where their behavior is still not quite right. And so the idea that no one can have adverse behavioral side effects that endure for months after the drug, I don't think that's true. I mean, we know, and here's why I don't think it's true. One, because I've seen, I've read a lot of case histories for antidepressants, and it hasn't been the case, but also there's things like LSD, you have hallucination, persistent perceptual disorder. This is, people take LSD and they continue in this mild kind of hallucinating state for up to a year. We've got the problems with the antidepressants and the benzodiazepines with protracted withdrawal injury that goes on for months to years afterwards. So it's definitely a possibility. There is simply not enough information in this case to really know what happens, but I think what happened, but it's a tragedy, and I wouldn't be so quick to discount the mother's suspicion of what was going on. She really knows her daughter best. So